Okay, so we are recording. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to South Carolina House District 115, correct? Am I right in the right? Okay.
Got it.
We have 5 candidates that are here. And the way that this is going to work is we're going to spend the first couple minutes just letting you take a minute or two to introduce yourselves to everyone. And then we've got 5 questions, and it's the same questions for everybody, but we're going to rotate through. And so, I'll sort of go in order and call out, who to answer next, and that will give you an opportunity to answer. And then, depending on time, if there's any sort of final thoughts, you're welcome to add that. We want to try and keep it to about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit more since there are so many candidates. But that's sort of the format. So if we want to go ahead and get started, and I'm just going to start for the introduction just in alphabetical order. So Eileen, if you want to go first and just introduce yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you to SC for Ed for hosting us this evening. And I want to thank to everyone who's going to watch this. I think you're recording it, so hopefully we'll have a lot of folks watching it afterwards. My name is Eileen Dougherty. I'm a Democrat running for, as you said, South Carolina House District 115. I'm wearing red today, and for Ed in honor of Teacher Appreciation Week and in honor of the anniversary of the all-out teachers rally you had last year in Columbia. I live on James Island, right down the road from James Island Elementary. I have 2 girls, one who's still in high school and the other one is in college at the College of Charleston. My husband, Matt, he's a commercial fisherman and we're small business owners. And I come to that from over a decade of working at Environmental Defense Fund, where I did advocacy and outreach work. And I partnered with fishermen to defend our oceans and our fishing industry. So whether it's climate change, flooding, or teacher pay, I see problems with our community that need to be fixed. In fishing, I would bring tough groups together to hash out real-world solutions, but those solutions often met roadblocks when they came in front of the decision makers who sat at the table. And so I just know how important that seat at the table is in order to be able to fix problems. So I'm running to be the fresh voice and decisive voice for our community and the voice for all of our citizens so they can live a good life. And I'll just finish up with a quick thank you. Last year at almost this time, as I mentioned, over 10,000 teachers spoke up for our children's future. And this year, teachers are supporting students during this unprecedented time. I've seen nothing like it in my life. And this looks like Zoom calls and phone calls and emails and so much more. And so I want to give a personal shout out to Miss Altine and Miss Cran, who are helping both Maddie and Mary during this time. So because of COVID, we're asking people that you consider voting absentee. There are 16 criteria. We have all that and other important information on our website at Elect Eileen. And again, my name is Eileen Dougherty, and thanks again so much for hosting us tonight.
Thank you. Josh, you're next.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for hosting this forum so that we could have a chance to speak to you guys and answer some of your questions. My name is Josh.
Sorry.
That's mine won't bark. I'm running as a Republican.
Let me mute myself. Okay. Keep going. Keep going.
Anderson, South Carolina, and I'm a product of Anderson County District 5. Currently live on James Island. I have 3 children that are ages almost 12, 8, and 5. 2 of those attend public schools on James Island, Camp Road Middle School, one at Stiles Point Elementary School. The other one is currently in preschool, but will be attending Stiles Point as a kindergartner 5K in the fall. So we look forward to having her there, and she is looking forward to it as well. As I said, I currently live on James Island. Education is very important to me. I had a father who was involved in education as his career for his entire career before he retired. It's always been important to me and will continue to be important as I bring my children up through the public education system. And I want them to have the best schools and opportunities that they can have. And we are lucky to be on James Island and have such fantastic schools that they attend. So look forward to answering your questions and going through tonight's forum.
Great, thank you. Carol? Carol, can you unmute yourself? Carol, can you unmute yourself? If you look at the bottom of your screen, you should be able to click on the microphone. I don't know why it doesn't allow me to unmute myself, unmute it.
It may be helpful to use the call-in number if you continue to have an issue. I know that has been a problem for me on some other forums as well.
I think though, as the owner of this, like I should be able to mute and unmute, and it's not letting me. Like it's grayed out, which I don't understand why that is. So can you, Carol, can you, I can't read, can you get closer?
Lisa, I can't hear you, but
There you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Okay.
perfect.
You got Carol now?
Hear me now? Well, Spencer can go if she wants to.
Well, no, it's all right, Carol. If you're ready, jump in, and
Okay.
I'll make my W turn.
All right, I'm so sorry. We're having troubles. But anyway, hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. As many of you know, I'm an educator, and I am very committed to our children and our teachers here in South Carolina. I think what I bring to the table is the fact that I'm an educator, a scientist, a small business person, and I've been a community activist. So as an educator, I've been a teacher, middle school, high school, and even fifth grade science. So I understand what makes a good, effective classroom. And that was one of the things I tried to bring to the rallies and to the legislative session this past year. I also have been a principal of middle school and high school. So I know how schools can be effective. I know the role that teachers play and how important it is to involve parents and other stakeholders. I've also been a district administrator, so I understand what systemic change is all about and how to do it. As a scientist, I think what I bring to the table is that I am able to research best practices and evaluate them to know whether the policies we would be making in the legislature would be effective or not. Now, I'm also a small business person, and I tried to give some thought as to how that relates to education. And the way it relates is that the things that I learned in a small business are things that I was able to apply when I was a district administrator. I was able to write grants, and I had a $5 million grant for science and was able to manage it. As a school principal, you know, there's always budgets and resources that need to be prioritized, so I know how to do that. I worked a lot with partnerships and collaboration. In fact, when it was time to get our schools wired, I was able to get people in the community to come in on Saturdays to help us wire the schools. So I've been involved a lot with systemic programs, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done there. As an activist, like many of you, I've been involved with the PTA. I serve on the School Improvement Council at Stiles Point. I served on the board for the James Island Charter High School, and I was chair of our constituent school board as well. And I chair the South Carolina Democratic Party Education Caucus, and I am on the leadership team for the Quality Education Project. And I'm wearing red tonight because I'm proud to be with the teachers, and I can assure you that my top priority in going to Columbia is to really help with the policies that I think will make schools more effective, because it's unacceptable for us to be 46th to 49th in the nation when I know that we have teachers in schools that are working really hard, and we need to have all of our students in the best schools possible. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Carol. Spencer?
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Super. So good evening, everyone. I am Spencer Whetmore. I'm going to just click here so I can see myself. There we go. I'm Spencer Whetmore. I am a Democrat running for SC House 115. I'm honored to be here tonight. I think SC for Ed is one of the more exciting examples of how communities can come together and really affect change. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. I'm a proud graduate of the Charleston County School District. I have two children, one of whom is in 7th grade at Charleston County School of the Arts, and my youngest daughter, Lola Kate, will be starting kindergarten at James Island Elementary in the fall. So thanks so much to the governor for 1 year too late of 4K, but we're excited to start in the fall. So we are, this campaign is really built on the fact that the leadership needs to be here to serve the people that it serves. And so in this case, when it comes to education, I'm currently the city administrator for Folly Beach. And if that position has taught me nothing else, it is the importance of listening to the staff that I serve, right? So in my role, I oversee everything from the budget to public works and public safety. And I don't pretend to be an expert on any of those things. I hope that my role in education can be very similar. My stepmom is a retired first grade teacher in the South Carolina school systems. And of course, I've seen my children's experience. And I think the most important thing is that the teachers have to be leading this. This has got to be, the educators are who should be making the policy regarding education. And so I'm very excited about the SC for Ed movement, because I feel like it's an opportunity, gone are the days of this political cronyism on the oversight board. This needs to be teacher and educator led. And I'm so excited that this movement's doing exactly that. So I certainly pledge to listen and have partners in the education field. That's, I think, the cornerstone of making any good decision here. So thank you again for having me tonight, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. And lastly, we've got Kathleen Wilson.
Great, thank you very much. And I want to thank SC for Ed for hosting us this evening, and for the other candidates for taking time out of your day to join, and for us to all to be together. This is an extremely strange time in life. Never thought we would be this way, but my hat's off to the teachers who are making it work every day, and in many cases are actually working harder than they did when they were physically in the classroom because of all the technology challenges. I am a James Island resident, and my husband and I have lived here. He's a lifelong James Islander, came up through the public school system, and I came to Charleston in 1987. I have probably the most unusual background of all the candidates, being a professional musician and spending an entire career in the performing arts, dovetailed with a very unusual athletic background. What that has done for me is dovetailed into employment, where I have spent time in the for-profit sector, the nonprofit sector, the governmental sector, and the self-employed sector. So I bring a very diverse background and a healthy dose of common sense, which is something we shouldn't take for granted anymore. My husband and I have 2 children, and they are both grown now. However, they both went to public schools. And as a matter of fact, we had the smorgasbord of public schools. My daughter she went to Buste Academy. So she went to a magnet school and graduated from James Island Charter and went on to the United States Naval Academy, where she graduated, and she is now a helicopter pilot, as a matter of fact, stationed on the Theodore Roosevelt. So she just got out of quarantine. My son went to a regular public school on James Island, and we have outstanding schools. He was a Harborview graduate, to Fort Johnson, to James Island Charter. So we've experienced the full range of the school district, and they have all been outstanding, and they serve my children very well. He is a Citadel graduate as an engineer, and he is now in the military, in the Navy as well, doing things that make people, mothers, very nervous. So I don't really talk about his work very much. But at any rate, we had a wonderful experience with the public school system, and education is the fundamental to a successful life. It truly is. An educated person can go on to do whatever he or she chooses to do. It raises the individual, and as a whole, it raises our state. And we have for too long neglected education in this state, beginning with teacher salaries and beginning with different paths, different curriculum paths. And what I will say is it all starts at a very tender age with literacy and making sure that children are literate and they don't get behind by 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. It seems to be that 3rd, 4th grade is the break point for literacy. And if a child is behind, it gets harder and harder to catch up. So I would stress learn to read programs and advocacy and intervention programs at those early ages going on through school. I look forward to working with educators and in education to transform this system and give teachers the tools that they need, beginning when they are training in college to become teachers. And we can, I'm sure, talk more about that, but I'm very excited to be here tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we're going to do 5 questions. And if you could, we can talk about education for days and days, but if you could sort of keep your answer to about 1 to 2 minutes, just not 10, 2, just to respect everybody's time, that would be great. Josh, I'm going to go ahead and start with you since you're the second one to introduce yourself. So this question is for all the candidates, but we'll just go in the same order. What is your opinion of the state of public education in South Carolina today?
Thank you. And as long as everybody can hear me okay, I think the public education system in South Carolina needs improvement. There's a lot there. There's a wonderful foundation, but we've got to continue to move forward and provide the best educational system that we can for our students in South Carolina. That includes keeping teachers in the classroom that need to stay in the classroom, that are being drawn away by other districts or states based on the money that they can receive, potentially pay increases to go to those districts. That creates a disruption for students and makes it difficult for those schools to continue to achieve at high levels. And we need to find ways to increase that teacher pay and close that particular gap. We need to find ways to focus more on the education itself, not necessarily the process of trying to confirm that education is happening. So testing is the major issue, and looking at issues of how we can both at one time reduce the testing, but also confirm that people and students are receiving the education that they need. Class size is a major issue. I'm lucky enough that on James Island, the classes that my students, my children have been reasonably sized, but I know that they're still larger than the recommended class size that South Carolina for Ed has as part of their legislative agenda. And I would have been thrilled for my elementary students to be in classes that had only 18 children in them, so that teacher had on each individual student more successfully and spend more time with them. There's a lot more I can say. I'm not sure exactly how long you want me to go since everybody needs to, but feel free to cut me off if I've taken up as much time as I need to.
No, I think that's great. I think we'll go ahead and move to Carol.
Okay, I'm here. Well, you asked what our opinion is of our school system, and I think that it depends on where you live. We have schools that are really good. Like I was the principal at Academic Magnet High School. It was the top high school in the state. And yet I know in the same area of North Charleston, there are schools that are high poverty that are not doing as well. So we have a mixed bag of education. We have excellence, and then we have real challenges. And I think the issue here is that one size doesn't fit all, and we need to empower our schools so that we have a school that meets the needs of the children. I sit on the School Improvement Council at South Point, and we grapple with issues. We have very good schools out here, yet we still have 25% of our students who are needing resources for reading and math. So while we have many good things, and it's good for students who are high achieving and good learners, we have challenges. So, I see it as I'm fortunate that my children were able to go to good schools here, but I'm also very aware of the fact that other students do not have the same benefits. So I think that we have to really look at what do schools need to be successful, and then we need to figure out how to help them. And of course, South Carolina, we rank anywhere from 46th to 49th, and we have not fully funded our public schools for a long, long time. And the stresses are beginning to show, no matter whether it's a really good school or a struggling school. And I can say that because at Stall's Point, for example, we had some 30 children who needed a reading and math intervention, and we couldn't get them. We couldn't help them because the resources were not there to provide the teacher. So we have our challenges with 700,000 students across the state. We have to think of multiple ways to help them.
Okay, thank you. Spencer?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. So I think that it's important that we talk about the good, right? So we are an amazing school district that serves an incredibly diverse population, both socioeconomically, racially, from an achievement perspective. That is great. And I think our teachers should be absolutely applauded for the incredible work that they have done with the limited resources. But yes, like everyone else, of course, I don't think that the public education system here in South Carolina is where it needs to be. I am certainly committed to things like fully funding the schools, listening to the teachers on the oversight committee, reducing the amount of testing. These are all small but obvious improvements that we need to be making, right? So I think the goal here really is to commit to listening to our educators on how to make this better, and committing to make this an absolute top priority.
Great, thank you. Kathleen?
Thank you. We have some bright spots. Our charter academic magnet is one of the best academic magnets in the country. And we also have some spots that are in great need of help. I see students who, in some cases, have tremendous challenges at home just getting out the door to come to school. So I think we have to be very mindful of those students and give them that extra bit of support that they're going to need. And as far as moving things along, there's a lot that we can do on a state level. And it's very frustrating to me to watch these things get mired down every year. Why are the teacher salaries as low as they are? And Carol was talking about reading interventionists. We need that. That has to be something that's automatically funded. And I will say it again, it boils down to literacy, because you can't do math problems until you are literate. You can't do anything. So that I keep coming back to that point of literacy, because it will transform a child's life. And again, having those alternate pathways, not as the child gets older and gets into high school. If they're not going to go to college, having that robust vocational curriculum established. But there's a tremendous amount that we could be doing that simply has fallen by. I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody said. They were very good comments, and I know we're pressed for time.
Great, thank you. Eileen?
Great. So we all know, as Carol mentioned, that South Carolina ranks in the bottom 10 on so many educational markers. So college readiness, job readiness, teacher pay, and pre-K.
That's good.
So that means many of our students don't receive the education that they need to go to college, trade school, or get a good job. So we have a lot of opportunity for improvement. And I really feel that teachers are the backbone of our public schools, and along with parents, they are in the front lines of our children's success. So in South Carolina, we as we know, we have trouble recruiting and retraining those qualified teachers because our teacher pay doesn't add up to the cost of living for so many of our teachers. So just as an example, Mary's teacher in 3rd grade, she completed her degree, her master's degree at College of Charleston. And as soon as she was done, she actually moved to New York because it was higher pay and we lost this really, really qualified teacher. So we have these outstanding schools here, but we also want to retain some of our quality teachers. And I also don't want to forget about a lot of the other staff that go into a school and into the educational system, from the frontline staff who will welcome parents with a smile, who make sure that they that children are getting the classes that they need. Those are so important, to our janitorial staff who are making sure that our kids are going to school in a clean and safe environment. So, and I will just echo and reiterate that it is time that we start listening to teachers and educators. You are the experts in the field. You see our children on a daily basis. You know what they need. We can work together with teachers and other experts to make sure we're doing the right things in terms of our children's future.
Okay, great, thank you. Carol, we're going to start with you for the next question. If you were elected, what is the first step you would take to improve public education? So you're only naming one step, but what would be the first one?
The first one would be teacher pay. And the reason is that if we do not have qualified teachers in the classroom, then the education falls apart. And so our teachers are way behind in their pay. And so the teacher pay needs to be there. And we need to also value experience. Our pay scales shouldn't end before 28 years. Which is when teachers retire. So we need to look at that pay scale continuum, and we need to have it so that the pay is steady and predictable. We often have had years where teachers have not received any raises at all, and that's not fair because the cost of living keeps going up.
Okay, Spencer?
Hi, I am torn on this one, to be honest with you. I come from a background as a staff person, and so my first instinct is always, how are we retaining and recruiting our staff members? But I will say that my very first move would be probably regarding the Education Oversight Committee. I think that is something that is a low-hanging fruit. It will fundamentally change the way we look at standardized testing, requirements for teachers in school. And so I think that would probably be my very
She started this.
Okay. Thank you. Kathleen?
Thank you. I would say it begins with teacher pay, because teacher pay is going to influence other elements. For example, we don't know what new social distancing requirements might be put into classrooms. If we are mandated to go with smaller classes, it's going to mandate more teachers. And again, now we need more teachers, but those teachers have to be paid. Teacher pay comes down to recruitment. It's something that will help drive a young person to going into the profession, to take the time to become educated and become a quality teacher and get into the classroom. So it all starts there.
Okay, great. Eileen?
It's last but not least, I would say teacher pay, and I won't reiterate everything that has already been said because there's some good points out there, but I think what does that actually look like? So when a teacher is they're going to school at 7 a.m., they have very little break time, they may not have time to plan their lessons, they may not have time to bounce ideas around with their fellow teachers, and after school they're grading papers, they're meeting with other teachers, and they have a lot of teachers also have after school activities that they chair as well. So I will say that, you know, we need to respect and value our teachers. It's a paying our teachers a living wage is a reflection of our values. And I think allowing a teacher to focus on our students and focus on our children who are the picture of our future is really important.
Okay. And Josh? Oh, Josh, you're on mute. Hold on. Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry. I got to remember to do that each time. I don't think my answer is going to be surprising because it's the first thing I mentioned in response to the first question. But I agree that teacher pay needs to be the first thing that's addressed. A lot of the other issues that I discussed, reducing testing is important. But I think that's something that's going to take time to show fruit that comes from that effort. And reducing testing and making sure that the things that need to be taught are being taught is still going to suffer if we can't keep teachers in classrooms and recruit them well enough to have them stay once they've started here or gotten an education. Same goes for class size. That focuses on reducing class size. That means we're going to increase.
None of them have their experience, but.
And that's going to have an adverse impact potentially on teacher pay. So I think getting to that level first and then trying to increase the number of teachers to reduce class size makes more sense. And so I think that covers the issue. I would focus on teacher pay, make sure that we can recruit. I think what Carol said is very important. There's no reason that a pay scale should stop 5 years before a teacher is eligible for retirement. Or stop having increases, and that just creates situations where you have districts that may have incentives for teachers that have been in the profession longer. And if a teacher's been in, let's say, Charleston County for a higher career and that's good eligibility to go to a different district, then that impacts.
It's so different when they don't have any money to deal with.
Carol, can you mute your microphone? You know how to do that? Yeah, just hit the.
Oh, I can't do that. I don't know where that is.
If you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little like a white thing, and you just click on the microphone, and it's thank you. Okay, Josh, I'm sorry. Did you get all what you wanted to say out?
I think I got there. Hopefully, you could hear all of it.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Okay, Spencer, we're to you for this next question. So the next question is, if elected, what would you do to address the funding of public education?
Well, I think there's a lot of different things here. You know, this idea that the legislatures could only rely on the budget for teacher salary and teacher pay is not true. You know, we fund a lot of things through legislation. We set minimums. The legislators fund their own salary through that. So I think this idea that we have to just rely on the budget for the funding is not accurate. Now, I'm not an expert on the state procedures, but my understanding is that there's an opportunity for funding in a lot of different ways. I think it needs to come with some oversight at a minimum, preferably some mandates for how, for example, Charleston County, how are we distributing the salary? You know, are we meeting the ideal ratios between, say, management and administration and our frontline teachers? You know, are we funding enough teachers to reduce classroom size? So it's not just a matter of teacher salary, it's a matter of the amount of money that's going towards teachers overall versus administrators. So either guidance or either mandates or certainly in a minimum guidance on how the money is spent, increasing the overall pool of money. You know, here in Charleston County, I think it's certainly easy for us to talk about, you know, we live on James Island where we're fortunate to have good schools, but we also really have to be looking at these underfunded schools and how the state is going to step in to meet that gap. So I think there's no silver bullet. Just like every issue, it's thorny and it's complicated, and you just got to roll up your sleeves and dig in and do the work.
Great. Thank you. Kathleen?
Thank you. Of course, this is a state budgeted item, and that obviously has to remain, but the state has to there has to be some backbone at the state level. Are we going to do this or not? And make it a priority. I know in Charleston County, one criticism that we've heard for years, and I believe is still true, is we are very top heavy in administration. And I think watching that top heaviness and perhaps attending to it, through attrition, not necessarily firing people, but through attrition, that sort of thing, recouping some of that money and putting it back into the school system in a different manner for teacher salaries, the numbers of teachers to bring down class sizes. But at the state level, we take years in which we have a surplus and we carve out a certain amount of money and we target, what are we going to target in education? How are we going to get this problem fixed and addressed? Be it underfunded schools, be it teacher salaries, be it school security items. There are all sorts of things, but get these things fixed in a very targeted manner. And the state has to have the collective will to do this. And that's part of the problem, is it's been hurting cats for too many years, and we need to stop hurting the cats.
Great. Eileen?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, funding education is really about our values. Do we value our students? Do we value our teachers? And, do we value preparing our children for the future? And if we do, then we're going to invest in our public schools. So how do we do that? So we had a lot of great ideas out there, but we also want to look at our tax code. So that's something that we can do now to prioritize educational funding. So we know there's some loopholes in there. We can go in there, take a look at that, and that is a great way to address some of the funding issues. And I really do feel that ultimately, when we reinvest in our public schools, and we do that now, we create those pathways to colleges, good schools, and trade schools for all children, we will reap a huge benefit for our community and our economy.
Great. Josh?
Thank you. So I think of two main things when I think of how do we address funding in public education. And the first one is, if we have a state mandate about what we need to do to fund our schools, we need to follow that state mandate about what we need to do to fund our schools. I've been in local government here on James Island. I've dealt with local government issues where there's a mandate for funds that are supposed to come to local governments, and it does not come to the local governments. What good is a mandate if you do not follow it? At that point in time, it's just a waste of paper and ink. So if we're going to have a mandate that says this is what needs to go to our schools, then we need to follow that mandate. Number two is making sure that money actually makes it into the classrooms. The district staff is important across the state. The administrators in those schools are important across the state, but we've got to get the money to the classroom. It's got to be available to the teachers, both from a teacher pay perspective, as well as from a materials perspective. It is saddening to me to get the list of materials that students have to bring to class, and then to also talk to teachers about what can I do to help you, because I'm in a position where I can provide more materials if I need to, and I know you're probably going to have some people in your classroom that can't. So tell me what is necessary for you to do your job. And all the teachers that I've asked that to have been immensely grateful about that. But teachers shouldn't have to do that. Parents shouldn't have to be in that position where they have to ask teachers what they can do to help them do their job. The state needs to provide that money, and the districts need to use that money wisely to make sure the teachers have what they need to do.
Great. Thank you. Carol?
All right. My colleagues here have identified a lot of issues related to funding. We have some fundamental problems with funding education in South Carolina. First of all, we have Act 388, which took away property taxes, which is stable. And what we're funding our schools on now is sales tax. So with the COVID-19 situation, I'm very concerned about what monies are going to be coming to the state because we have an economy problem. But what I think a major problem in funding for South Carolina is that we have so many multiple pots of money. If you ask the question, how much money are we spending on a student, it can range tremendously by thousands and thousands of dollars, because we really do not understand where all the money comes from and how it gets to the classroom. So there's a model out there that I really like, and it's a model in which you look at what is it you respect and value in education. What is it that you really want? how many students, starts with one of the basic things, how many students do you want in a classroom? Because that determines how many teachers you're going to need to meet that classroom size. And then you begin to think about what the resources are. And then you think about what the needs are. Do you need guidance counselors? Do you need media specialists? Do you need how many special education teachers? I think you get the idea. There's a lot of factors that go into making a school be effective. So if you start with a funding formula or a process where you fund the schools based on needs, then you begin to know how much money do you really need to allocate. And in South Carolina, education is supposed to be our first priority, and it's one of the first things that we should be funding. But we don't fund our schools appropriately because we're grabbing at a lot of different pots of money, and we really don't know ultimately how much we're spending and how much gets to the classroom. So that's a fundamental thing that I think needs to be done. I've been in seminars where I've heard people from the budget and revenue departments talk about it, and they have the model. They got that Excel spreadsheet ready to go, but we need policies made by legislators who understand what effective classrooms are all about, and I think that's what I bring to the table.
Okay. Did everybody answer that one, y'all? I'm sorry. This is crazy. Okay, so I think we are to Kathleen for you to start this one.
Yes,
Is that right? Okay.
that's right.
So, considering how well educators continued to provide instruction after the COVID-19 pandemic, or we're still in it, so let's just say during the COVID-19 pandemic, after they decided to cancel state testing and assessment. So, you know, they got rid of state testing for this year. What are your opinions about accountability measures in South Carolina? Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'll start off saying that I have always felt that there was too much testing in South Carolina. The pendulum swang. It started, you know, with too little testing, and over the years has swung completely to the other extreme. I think this year's going to be very, very difficult because there won't be those tests put into place. I think we'll probably just have to bypass a year. And what I foresee is school being started a little bit earlier. There's going to have to be some sort of reckoning for all of the classroom time that has been missed, even though teachers have been heroic in their efforts to keep things going. I worry mostly about the children who have had limited access to internet, and those are the ones who are going to suffer the most because they will not have met the standards. So I think we're going to have to compensate with taking especially good care of our students in the coming year. And we may find that a lot of this testing was unnecessary, and we can put that time towards good use in the classroom with learning concepts.
Okay, thank you. Eileen? Eileen, you're on mute. Can you? Okay.
Well, please. Yes. Sorry, I muted myself. Absolutely. So I really do believe that we shouldn't just test to test. We don't need to be doing things and making our students jump through hurdles just to make them jump through hurdles. And I will say, as I mentioned before, Maddie, she's now a freshman at College of Charleston, but she had a very hard time with end of year testing. She had a very hard time. She did not perform well on the ACT. But at College of Charleston, she's doing great as a sophomore level in calculus and chemistry. So I think we want to be careful to use these tests as measures of the future success of our children. So I would say we need to re-examine these high stakes tests. We would need to look at what their purpose is, why we do it, and most importantly, what are the results, so we can make sure any testing that we do is setting up our students on a pathway to success.
Okay. Josh?
Okay. So I think there was an issue related to testing, obviously, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic that we're dealing with at this point in time. And That issue is still there, still present, but now has been changed. And how do we really assess where students are at this point in time? And I think the continued work that's been done, the teachers that I'm dealing with have been phenomenal. And it gives folks that have not been in a classroom setting the ability to understand the difficulties that teachers face on a day-to-day basis. And I'm only dealing with 2 students, not 20 or more at that point in time. So I can empathize at least a little bit. I'm sure I don't get the full grasp of it. But I think trying to figure out a way to appropriately assess students for the end of this academic year and this period is going to be exceptionally difficult. It's not going to be anything that, except for a few minor issues and opportunities that we can really assess until the beginning of next year. But testing overall, outside of the COVID-19 pandemic issues, I think is a balance. You have to have a balance of testing that can show you that the things that need to be taught in the classroom are being taught and being learned, and you have some way to measure that and quantify that. But it doesn't need to be layers upon layers upon layers of testing. We don't need one set of testing mandates from the federal government, another layer of mandated testing guidelines from the state government, and then potentially even more mandated testing guidelines from the district level. We need to balance, how do we judge that these things are being taught and taught appropriately with the amount of time that we're spending doing that testing. It seems like with my children, not more than a couple of weeks goes by before another mandated standardized test is being taken. And it's hard to even keep up with all of the different ones that they have. So I think the most important thing is to try and find that balance. Are we teaching the right things? Are we putting so much testing in place that the only thing that's being done is we're teaching a test, and students are losing out on other material that they would otherwise get to receive? And that's a balancing act. And that's something that can only be done with input from groups like South Carolina for Education, and other teacher groups that are involved and stakeholders in that situation as well.
Great, thank you. Carol?
All right, well, we do want to hold ourselves accountable for what the teaching and learning is, but we've gone way too far on testing. We've forgotten that teachers understand what children are learning just because they see them every day. They're grading their papers and they have a chance to give the students feedback. I think with the COVID-19 situation, we're going to have to very quickly assess where children are, what their particular needs are, and probably at no time, in the past will we need to have teachers who are really qualified to design and personalize the learning that's needed for individual students, because they're going to be at different places, because even though the children are doing their lessons online, they're not all doing things the same. They don't have the support system in place at home. So I'm very worried about where the children are. So I think very quickly we're going to have to assess. And I know that we have MAP testing, which is one tool. It's not the only tool, but it's one tool that would show us fairly quickly what the children know and what they need to go, and to form a path to bring the children up to speed. We've gotten overboard in all of the summative testing that goes on at the end of the year. In fact, we spend more time teaching to the tests than we do teaching new learning, and I think that has to stop. The thing that we want to do is we want to assess how children are learning. I mean, so often parents will say, well, my kid's doing really well, and then they get the tests back and it doesn't really reflect the critical thinking skills and the problem solving that children are able to do. And I feel that we need to stop all this testing that doesn't inform our teaching. When you test at the end of the year, those tests really don't tell you how to help the student. It's the teacher's assessment. And so, if teachers need more professional development on how to assess students effectively, I think they'll be great because that will also improve their teaching. So those are my thoughts, and I appreciate all the thoughts my colleagues have made as well from their own experiences.
Okay, thank you. Spencer?
Thank you so much. So there's no question that we have far too much standardized testing. We are, this is not how our teachers' success or failure should be judged. This is not how our children's success or failure should be judged. And it's taking up valuable teaching time, not just teaching to the test, but actually administering the tests. I think, how do we fix it? We, just as I've been saying, we assemble a panel of teachers, administrators, and other educators to look across the country and across the globe. We've got countries that are doing this better than the United States. And then within the United States, we've got models. So at a minimum, we go down to we are above what the federal government is requiring. So we go down to the federal government. And then I think we also go a step further and we take up the U.S. Department of Education on their idea of a flexibility waiver. And we say, hey, can we apply for this waiver? How can we bring it in so that our students are, doing the minimal amount of testing to achieve the accountability that we ask?
Okay, great. Y'all, that's the end of the questions. So I'm going to stop recording, and that'll be the end. And I cannot stop recording.